Hello everyone, welcome to the stream. Thank you all for being here today. What's on the menu today? Exactly what I'm about to get to. What I really wanted to do today was look at Adobe's new podcast voice enhancer thing. It's an AI tool, basically just like resynthesizes your voice, makes it this like podcasty radio sort of voice. I couldn't get into the website, so we'll give it one more try and abandon it forever if we can't get in. What I've seen of it has been pretty cool. I want to make some progress on the ReaLearn video. So I got my X-Touch connected again. Try to get that going with ReaLearn at least so that I can relearn it. Relearn it. Yeah, because I've just forgotten everything that I know about it. I want to try out the free VST called the Growler, which is a bass distortion. So I'm going to play some bass through that. And yeah, actually, let's talk about this new thing. On the merch shop, which is reaperblog.threadless.com or reaper.blog/merch, there's a new shirt design. It's called Wires. And so it's, you know, some guy jacking into the Matrix or the Reaper blog website with this modular computer system. This is again a Midjourney creation, but I think it looks pretty damn cool on a shirt, and you can get this in white. So actually put in this sort of asymmetrical outline in here so that it would look really nice on any shirt color. I can unlock other colors if you guys are interested in other colors. And also with the black one, it should fade nicely so that you have some, you know, deeper blacks in the print part. I think it's a really cool design. You even have an XL size preview. Interesting. Also available on a mug or a tote bag. And then going back to the other designs, I put up the green retro logo. I never released this as a shirt design. And hopefully that's going to be the right kind of width so it doesn't go into the armpits. Sometimes the shirt designs with a long logo like that ends up getting into the armpit area and you don't see the whole text. So there's that one. There's also the gradient, which I've modified slightly. The gradient's a little bit different than it used to be with the previous run of shirts. And this is available on various colors. I like this this cyan. That works well. It looks good on asphalt, light pink. And then this one, which has been out for about 2 weeks. And Jason's already got his. All right, so in the comments, I got David's Forsyth. I'm mostly podcast editing these days, so I have no use for a control surface, but that doesn't stop me from really wanting one. Yeah, that's true. I do a lot of podcast editing, or I was. And the control surface is not useful a lot of the time. Mostly you're working with a template and everything's already set the way that you need it. But it's super helpful to have hands-on control for the plugins if you put in the time to actually build that sort of system. And then if you are doing more of an audio drama where there's ambience, there's sound effects, and all the various layers that go into that, having that all on separate faders is super nice. You know, maybe something with a lot of buttons can be useful so that you can insert your favorite effects onto the selected item or the selected track. You know, load up presets, load up track templates, all that really quickly. You can use the Stream Deck for that. You can use the Novation Launchpad. Lots of options for that. And then have a separate controller just for like the selected track volume. Often I would use the mod wheel on my keyboard if I had that in front of me. Just having one volume control on a dedicated controller is super nice. But 8 is better. Paul Stroud says, spending more spare time in smart knobs too, but this is ingesting. I think you mean interesting. Yeah, so I plan to do a video on smart knobs as well, but it's just a lot more complicated than the others. So I don't think, I think it might take me a while, and I don't like how you need to connect the X-Touch to, like through the extra cables to get the colors working. So that's kind of a, points off for that. It's not ideal. So yeah, it's both powerful and complex. I know that in the end, I'm just going to use CSI, but I've just been torturing myself by trying to learn all these different things, and then not really being able to enjoy my X-Touch in the meantime. But, they're all good in their own ways, and they all have a lot of overlap and then some unique features. Yeah, Tycho made a video on the Console 1 recently, and that was, a good video. I've talked to him a few times since he was on the blog, and what did we do? Helped him like troubleshoot some various things for his live setup and get set up for his new computers and stuff like that. So he usually comes to me with a list of things that I can usually answer right away, but sometimes they're a little more involved, and we both learn something. So this is the Growler from August Rose Audio. This is a bass guitar distortion, and I'm going to plug that in with my Fender. Is this live session every week, same time? Yeah, I'm going to try to be 9:30 a.m. Pacific until 12:30 p.m. So this is called the Growler from August Rose Audio, and this is a free for Mac and Windows VST3 effect. This is my very first time opening it up. So we got bass, treble, bypass, growl, hot, mix, and then various cabinet emulations. So that's flat. All right, and let's crank that treble. Yeah, sounds good. So I think so far my favorite setting would be just bass and treble cranked with the hot on. I don't particularly like the growl, but let's try growl without hot as well. Yeah, the growl thing doesn't suit me. I think my favorite here was IR3, and I like 4 plus sub. 4 by itself seemed a bit thin. So that's sort of like a scooped kind of sound. I like it. How to set the end point of the project. Projects are infinitely long in Reaper. You can set a end point, and I'll show you that in Reaper. Open up your project settings, go to, where is it? Where is it? Here it is. Under Advanced, limit project length, stop playback and recording at, this is set to 3 hours, but you could set this to whatever you want. And that prevents you from zooming out infinitely. The equals end marker is actually just for rendering. So that defines the entire project range from the start marker to the end marker. That's the entire project range for rendering. I said more, but I was muted. I know you've probably mentioned this, but do you have a current preference for an X-Touch driver? Driven by Moss was kind of the easiest one to get into. I think there's a lot of nice, unique features in that. Like the easiest one overall would be the built-in one. And basically you just don't get the ability to control plugins with that. The Driven by Moss allows you to, if I remember correctly, I think you can do plugin control with that. It has a really nice browser for adding plugins to the track, which is nice. But a lot of things are basically set and you can't really adjust them. ReaLearn is complicated. Smart Knobs 2 is super complicated. CSI has a pretty good starting point. It was incomplete, and that is constantly changing, and unfortunately, it's hard to keep up with. I will probably end up with CSI at the end of trying all of these. If I was just recommending one for getting started with it, then Driven by Moss. Follow my video, and I think there's even been an update since then that implements some of the things that I mentioned were kind of missing. Thoughts on the Growler? I think it sounds pretty good. Pretty fun to play with. It's good. I'd recommend it. What do you find difficult about ReaLearn? There's like a 90-page manual, which is tough to get through. The X-Touch implementation isn't complete. It's basically for MCU. Adding on to that is just a lot of steps, a lot of menu diving, a lot of manual steps, and a lot of sort of concepts that I find tricky to understand with ReaLearn, because there's just certain terms that I'm not familiar with, or, you know, I haven't made it all the way through the manual. You have to approach it from the stance of judging it on its MCU implementation as it is, without doing any modifications. And then I look at 3, maybe 5 unique things about ReaLearn that expands upon that, rather than with the goal of completely implementing the X-Touch in every possible function there using ReaLearn. And that's kind of how I started doing it, trying to like build my own map for the X-Touch, but it's just, there's 200 buttons. ReaLearn can do a lot, but not everything is built for you, and that makes it difficult. I want to give this Adobe thing another chance because it's very interesting. Adobe Podcast Beta. This allows you to enhance vocal recordings for free, like for podcasts, spoken word, audiobooks, things like that. I believe you have to upload an MP3, which is kind of a pain. But I saw a demo of this. All right, so the video I was watching is from Manchester Music, The End of Microphones, he called it. But he tried out, in the intro, you can hear him talking into his iPhone at like an arm's distance, which sounds terrible compared to the LCT 1000 or something like that, tube microphone from Lewitt. They kind of sound similar after that Adobe podcast thing. So I would like to, I'll link to that because is where I got this idea. So it's worth shouting that video out. And we're probably not going to be able to get into this website anyways. So I'll try signing in. And I'll try signing in with Google. I use my Google account. Yeah, so this is all I got yesterday. Try signing in. Tried making a new account. Sign in with Facebook. And yeah, I just kept getting this over and over. So if that sounds interesting, like it's very impressive, the difference in quality. So this is like the original here, clipped off at 16K, and it's very kind of grainy, unfocused. And then here's the post-processed version. Audio goes up to 24K, and it's much cleaner dialogue. But there's some sort of weird robotic kind of things in if he's got more of a gravelly inflection, which sounds very strange. Overall, really impressive tech that hopefully we can use and not have to use MP3s for it. But the worst part about doing podcasts is getting really terrible audio from somebody. The worst part is getting really terrible audio. Maybe you don't notice it at the time if you're on a Zoom call or something like that. If they're recording on their phone, it's really tough to clean that up and make it sound like a studio microphone, or even just make it not sound ear bleeding. If they keep this as a free tool, it'll be really cool. We were talking about AI stuff last week, so this caught my attention. Yeah, so check out that video after the stream, of course. And I guess we'll just go over to Reaper and we'll try ReaLearn. All right, so here's the website for ReaLearn. This is a Reaper extension for control surfaces, doing completely custom control surfaces for Reaper, merging multiple devices into one sort of thing. And the interesting thing about this one compared to some of the others, like the built-in control surface functions within Reaper for MCUs or for fader ports, or the third-party extensions like Driven by Moss and CSI. This one is a VST plugin, and it's more project-based rather than global. That's a neat approach to this. That's one thing that makes this unique, and there is quite a lot of information to digest to make this work. I'm just scrolling through this user guide, and the PDF I think is 90 pages, 91 pages. So there's a lot to learn there. The basics are you plug in your MIDI control surface. You make sure that there's nothing in the control surfaces page that would make it already be used. Then you go to your MIDI devices and set this up for input and output. Enable input for control messages. I'm pretty sure it's only control is necessary. And where is that? X-Touch internal output to the device. Yeah, I'm pretty sure that's right. Then you set up a track with ReaLearn on it. I think technically you can put this into the monitor effects chain as well. Once it's installed, it's a VST plugin. I'll put that on the track. Okay, for input, we've got Behringer internal, output Behringer internal. And then for main preset, we got DAW control and mapping. Is that right? I can't remember if that's right. Somewhere in here, there's an MCU function, and I forget. Oh wait, controller. Here it is. So forget about the main section. I think you put that on none. And then controller, you set to Mackie control. Yeah, okay. So there's all the different things that are pre-mapped, which is quite a lot. So all the faders and junk are there. How do we get this to spring to life? I forget. I think you need to toggle it offline and then on again. No. There we go. Okay, so it's found the tracks and it can control the tracks, and I see on my Reaper screen that the faders are moving along with the controller. So most things are mapped. Well, I shouldn't say most things. Some things are mapped. We've got the jog wheel, marker button, the read write, channel left, channel right, bank left, bank right, rewind, fast forward, play, stop, cycle, scrub, cursor left, cursor right, cursor up, down, nudge, replace, click, solo, faders 1 through, F, 1 through 6, and SMPTE beats button. Is there a way we can create a split tool in Reaper and set it as a button in the tool menu right about the piano roll, right above the piano roll? A split tool? Yes, absolutely. That's actually very easy. So the concept in Reaper for that is the armed action. All right, so a split tool. Essentially, we are setting up the shortcut, which, we're putting in MIDI note, should be S to split, right? Basically, you want a shortcut so that when you left click, I'm guessing that it will split at the edit cursor. So we will customize your toolbar and add in an action, which we'll call split. And we want edit split notes at mouse cursor and select and close. And just so that everyone can see it, let's put this as the first in the toolbar. We can customize this icon with a scissor. Yeah, there's a knife. Okay. So now there's a button on the toolbar, and the thing is, this isn't going to work as a tool unless you arm it. So arming a action is right click. And now anytime I left click, it's going to move my edit cursor and split at that point. Yeah, that works. And if you want to disarm that action, the escape key will disarm it and your mouse will go back to normal. Basically, an armed action will run the action anytime the left mouse click happens. That works in the MIDI editor and the arrange view. Super simple to set up. It works with most functions. One thing I don't like about this is that it's not deselecting the other items, which is something that I don't particularly like, but it doesn't really matter in this case. But yeah, technically any action you can right click and arm it, but not a lot of them make sense. So you could do like a glue tool. You could do the split, the color actions. There are different mapping groups. So there's a fader group, and these group things are just kind of the mapping groups are a way that we can organize things. I can't remember if these are the same as tags, but if I go to main fader multi, hit edit, this is the mapping window for all the functions of this category MIDI, type pitch wheel. You know, this is the thing I don't understand about ReaLearn. Why pitch wheel? Why is that the type that works for faders? That doesn't make sense to me, but that's what's used in the MCU implementation. And then channel 9. And I guess it's channel 9 because it's the 9th fader here. I don't know for sure. Type virtual and multi. This makes no sense to me at this time. We've got minimum and maximum. We've got feedback. We've got, yeah. It's been so long since I've looked at this stuff, read the manual or anything, that I forget everything about it. Maps to channel, fader 3 maps to channel 3 of the thing, and at the top I can see that there's control and feedback. So the groups function, I don't see where that was assigned. which is weird. And I don't see tags being used. So they created a group here using the add button and then added those controller maps to that group, which is different from tags. I search for button. Here's one. Do they use tags here? No. If we're on the all group and we go to search for button, there's various buttons. So the read button, I'm going to go and add in the tag auto for automation, and we'll go forward to the right button. Okay, so if I've got the word auto in there, you would think that that would come up there, but it doesn't seem to. So I don't know. Oh, I love that. I love doing that on stream. The tags are supposed to be searchable using this. But for me, it didn't work. I don't know. Oh, Jason, you didn't know about armed actions? Yeah. They're rarely used, but pretty useful. Couldn't you make a custom action that force deselects the previous MIDI note? Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, so you just replace that split action with something that deselects first. When I'm editing in the main view, when I split, I want the one on the left to be deselected, and the selected note is the one that the new note or the new item. It is important to not have both sides of the split still selected because you have to deselect it before you can do anything with it. Let's see what is actually mapped and what feels kind of intuitive to me. So we've got read on off for the master track is selected right now for some reason. That's affecting the master track. Or maybe it's global. Okay. So the read on off is actually the global automation mode. And it's only the read and the right buttons. So read is global read, tap it again is global none. And then the right button is actually touch mode. Filter source, is that this button? There we go. So the filter can apply to touching the controller or touching the function within Reaper. If we don't want this to be right mode, we need another function. It's here somewhere. If I didn't want it to be on the touch mode, if I wanted something else, is there a cancel? I can't even do cancel. Damn it. So it seems like the right function that's built into this does touch mode. I never use touch mode. I always use latch preview. So, or really just having each of the buttons available would be better for me, which I guess is that's why the touch button isn't assigned. So if I want to add that, edit, learn source, touch button, learn target, I go to Real, I go to invoke Reaper action, set automation mode override, none, bypass, all over. Override. There we go. That one's set to touch. Okay, so to test that. So I don't want it to just be as I'm holding it. Which means fire on press or release. Press only. Let's try that. Yeah, I think that works. So pressing it turns it on. I think I figured that out. Okay, so we've added a function. It's not too complicated, but there's a lot of menus and it's a bit of trial and error to find what you're looking for there. Now that I know where that is, let's filter source for the right button and actually change that mode to the real function, set automation mode override to override and write mode, and set this to fire on press only. All right, so it's on write mode. Touch mode, write mode, read, off. Cool. Filter source for latch. Add one. I need to name this, so this will be the latch. Tag this as auto and set this to a real. Automation override, override, latch, and press only, which did not work. Oh, it doesn't work because I didn't set the target yet, or the source yet. So I hit learn, press the button. That part's pretty simple, and I do like that. Would you be able to demonstrate mapping a controller button to an action via ReaLearn, like if I wanted to split at cursor and trigger via a button? Yes, we'll do that next. There's an extra button on my X-Touch here for trim, and I never use trim mode, and the read off button is basically trim anyways. So this trim function is going to be the right to time selection button. We're going to learn trim, going to set to real, and now this time we're going to use a invoke Reaper action, and we're going to set this to trigger. If I click on pick, it opens up the action list. Automation, write current values to actively writing envelopes to time selection. We're going to select and close. And we're going to make this press only, and then OK. All right, so the workflow there is to set the global override to latch preview. Let's set a time selection with the mouse. On track 2, I will adjust the volume as this plays back. So we can see that there's an envelope lane. It's red for, because it's armed. And so let's say that this is the correct level that we want. We're going to hit the trim button on the X-Touch, and that moves the current position of the volume fader within this time selection to that value. And then we just need to set that back to read before we make any other changes. And once we do that, then everything is armed but not actively writing, so it's yellow instead of red. And we can do that for the next track. Also adjust the panning, write that to the selection, go back to read. And if I close the dock, you should see that wrote those changes, not continuously, just within the selection at the value that I last touched it at. And that's usually how I'm doing automation. I don't usually do it from the control surface, but it's nice to have. I use a cycle action instead. So I press P to go into that mode. I will make my changes. I will press P again. It writes those changes to the time selection and comes out of latch preview into read mode. That's how I usually work. Andre is asking, currently setting up a temporary recording studio in an abandoned building for making a theater show. Using a PC with an AMD Ryzen 5, Reaper installed. It's a bit of bits and pieces project. Sound cards, there's an Audient ID14 Mark II, a Tascam 1608, and a RME MADI face USB. How do you make an aggregate device to have them all in Reaper? Tried ACO for all, no success. And all devices are connected through USB. You probably won't be able to do that. I don't know if the Audient ID14 or the Tascam can be used standalone. If they're possible to run standalone, you want to have probably the Tascam as your external mic preamp and use an ADAT cable to go from there to the Audient. The MADI face, I don't know how you would use it in that situation because those other devices don't output MADI. Tascam has no ADAT. Isn't it 16 inputs though? Yeah, this one doesn't have ADAT, so you can't really use that one. Tascam 1608. So it's 8 XLR in, 2 additional line inputs on the front, and then 6 in the back. Is that right? 2, 4, 6. Yeah, 6 in the back. None of this is ideal. I know you want to use what you have, but what I'd recommend is going to a place that can rent you a X32, Behringer X32. Try to rent one of these for the event, because this gives you 40 inputs and it's just one USB to the computer. I think it can record internally. It has built-in effects. I've seen people use this as a control surface with REAPER. You can do a lot with it. So you've got 32 inputs over XLR. They can be switched to mic or line. There's another 6 aux in using various connectors. MIDI in. There's digital out, remote control stuff. There are 16 analog outs over XLR. There's your main control room over XLR or 1/4 inch. But yeah, 3 USB devices on the system hacked together with ACO for all. That's really not going to work. But yeah, there's a rack mount unit as well. The X32 has all the faders and, you know, physical buttons for everything. The rack mount version will work as well. Where is that? Wait, there's the XR18, there's the X32 Compact. These are actually some of Behringer's best products. I think they took a lot from Midas. Very reliable things, actually. Surprisingly. What type of electric guitar do I have at the moment? I'll show you. Fender Aerodyne Telecaster. I'm not sure what year this would be. Maybe like a 2007 or something like that. It's got a soap bar pickup and P90 single coil. I've upgraded it with Burns brand pots and the treble bleed circuit thing. I've got the Squier Classic Vibe baritone, another Telecaster body. But it's a baritone, thicker strings, longer neck. Don't really like the finish of the neck, but you can only, you know, unless it's custom shop, you don't really get to choose. I have a Solar, what is it? What's the model? GC 1.6 TAW. Les Paul style body, active pickups, Duncan Solar pickups. It's just okay. It looks nice. It's just okay. Fender Aerodyne jazz bass. Fender Aerodyne jazz bass. This is a 2022 purchase. Just before they discontinued them and then redid the line with absolutely terrible colors. So this is a extra thin kind of jazz bass body with a jazz bass pickup in the bridge and a P bass pickup in the center. This is a Ibanez Roadstar 2, probably from 1986. This is a little thicker than the last one. It's got a big humbucker with a coil tap. This is a Sterling Ray 34, 4-string, pretty heavy, active pickup or active EQ in it. Swamp Ash with a maple neck, I think. What's a very underrated bass? I missed what you were saying. Ibanez Roadstar, I've had a completely different looking model before. It was an all black one. The back of the neck was black, really thick, wide neck on it, and it had 2 humbuckers. I played that a lot, but it sort of just overall had kind of a weird dead tone. I ended up selling it, got a new Ibanez, then sold that probably a year later. I've had so many different basses, but love that Fender bass. The Aerodyne Jazz bass, absolutely the best bass that I've ever played. I used to have the Warwick Rock bass, some model. I've had a lot of basses. I've had Yamahas, BC Rich. I've had a PV. User-made templates. I don't know. I haven't looked that up, so maybe. I'll give it a neutral 5. Assignable user actions from the action list, 10. 10 out of 10, that's very easy to do. Multiple controllers, yes. Extenders, yes. Built-in configuration UI, yes. Effects auto mapping. I don't think so. I think that's a 0. Effects manual mapping, 10. Effects controls. Okay, effects track controls. So that's if I have, let's say I've got this low control, showing in the track controls. I want to see if it can automatically get that. So let's do learn target and move that. It does learn it. And then source, I don't know, control 1. It doesn't look like it's working. If I replace the pan, it works. Okay, so it's possible. It's not automatic. We'll give it a 7. Driven by Moss does that automatically, and that's why I included that. Is there a way to package up an entire project, including rendering out stems if desired, into a single file to easily send off? I think you mentioned that to me before. FL Studio has a function kind of like that. You can zip, you can collect and zip a project. It doesn't render out stems though. At least it didn't 15 years ago when I used it. That would be an interesting thing to do. I don't think it's necessarily difficult to do. It's all functions that are included with Reaper. The last thing would be like zipping it in the end. If we've got a project, we can go to File, say Project As, create a subdirectory and copy all media. We put that on the desktop, say. And then we render, let's say, selected track stems, or there isn't all tracks, but well, stems. In time selection, we'll just select all tracks. And if the directory is blank, it's going to go to the folder for that project. We could just make a folder called stems. You want a file name /stems. And now it'll be desktop untitled stems. So it's going to render 3 files. Project dash track. And none of my tracks are named, so it'll be whatever it is. So let's make that a FLAC just to save space. And sure. And now on the desktop, there's a folder. We've got the media files folder, which is empty, but that would include samples and recordings and things that are used in the session currently. And then in the stems, we've got the 3 stems and the project file. We can select them all and zip it. It's not a lot of steps. It's mostly automated by the fact that we can render stems quickly. There's also the consolidate function, which might be useful. This is without effects. So it depends on how you want to do it. Being able to do that without launching Reaper would be the nice trick. Looking into a hardware controller for the Pro Q3, trying to auto-edit the selected Pro Q and not every instance on accident. Finding the right hardware for that is probably the tricky thing to do. Okay, so this is on Etsy. It's $80. This is 8 potentiometers. They're not endless, unfortunately, but that is kind of why they are a little less expensive. With and you can set everything to whatever you want. 2 of these, or maybe 3 of these, would be all you need for an advanced EQ like that, and probably more. You just need to set up something so that it applies to the selected track, or maybe the effects that's in focus. And you start with a template, so it's automatically mapped. You've got 8 bands, 1 knob for gain, 1 knob for Q, 1 knob for, what's the other one? Frequency. Endless rotaries are much more expensive. Okay, beat step. Yeah. Technically, that's cheaper. That would probably be a good controller for an EQ. It depends how these endless knobs feel, because I've had one of those things, what do you call it? The keyboard version of this, which had multiple rows of knobs, but they felt really bad. They're really wiggly, and they weren't control plugins particularly smoothly. Is it really only like $139? I should just get one. Yeah, this would be good for an EQ. Some endless knobs don't feel too good. Some be way too loose. Yep. So the Arturia... No, not hardware synths. Controllers. The Minilab 2, I think I had. And that was kind of clunky. I don't think I've ever seen the Minilab 3. Knobs look better. But maybe it's just the knob and not actually what it's connected to. How easy it is to map the pads? Yeah, the pads just send a note on and note off. Probably with velocity, maybe with aftertouch. But something that cheap is probably not going to send aftertouch. Yeah, and then in something like ReaLearn, you just need to set it to press and release, or press only, or release only. Arturia's stuff has its own editor, and you can set it so that it sends a note on, a note off, maybe different notes for on and off. Yeah, MIDI Control Center is just a separate app that you can configure all the functions. It's $139 Canadian too. How is that possible? I don't even know what it does technically. I think it's a sequencer, isn't it? I see it all the time in videos, or the BeatStep Pro used a lot, but never really looked into it. All brands have MIDI controller apps, at least to my knowledge, some good, some not. I mean, technically everything will work with like the third-party tools, like what is it? I've used something before and I just cannot figure out what it's called. Bohm? Might be Bohm. And there's Midox or something like that. MIDIOX. Yeah, so you can use MIDIOX or Bohm possibly to like reconfigure or kind of go in between the different software. Kind of creates its own driver to remap what's coming out of it. But a lot of the companies make their own. Arturia's was pretty good. Yeah, most of the controllers work without the software. Yeah, so I was a big fan of the Nocturn, which you can see back here. But there's no Mac software for this. They discontinued this a few months after I made a video saying that there's still a good deal. That was quite a while ago, but that will at least still work as a general MIDI controller. The software that came with it was pretty good for automatically, it was called AutoMap. and it could see your VSTs, get all the parameters, and you could just drag and drop to move things around, change the scaling, change the relative modes and things like that. But it has 8 touch-sensitive rotary faders that have enough resolution to actually feel pretty good. And then 12 or so buttons that you can configure. And there is like a MCU mode, there's a like a DAW remote control mode, or 16 MIDI layouts. Without the software, it functions as just a kind of dumb MIDI controller. It outputs a preset MIDI map that can't be adjusted. But it still does, it's still 49 keys with aftertouch, which is pretty nice to have. That scroll action is so slow. Why is it so slow? And then the scroll horizontally is so fast. Scroll vertically MIDI CC relative or mouse wheel. Okay, so I think that's the problem, because it's sending it from a button when this is a relative mouse modifier. Scroll vertically. Really, it should be like scroll view up. Let's see if that's better. That's basically going one track at a time. That's much better for me. Oh, and the other thing is that there are these speed modifiers. So we could use the same one and just increase the speed to like 4x or something like that. But scrolling this way seems better. For me, that's more intuitive. Well, let's actually go back to that original action, which was scroll vertically mouse wheel. Okay, so if I'm doing this, that's going down slowly. I can set this to +4. And yeah, and that's similar now. All right, so now we're going to look at page 3 of the Reaper 7 wish list on the official forum. AAF and OMF support. This can blow away competitors for post-production, since in other aspects, nor Nuendo or Pro Tools can reach Reaper workflow. I don't think this is really going to come natively. There is third-party tools that do this really well. Somebody had actually emailed me this, kind of demanding that it be implemented. Reaper is not competing with these other companies. They just make a good product. There's only 2 developers, and there's third-party developers making translation tools for OMF, for AAF, that work well enough that it doesn't make sense to the Reaper developers to implement that natively, put those products out of business. That's not good for the community. And yeah, any of the professional users that really require this, it's a very small investment to get those tools. I guess that's partly my opinion on it, but also what I found to be true over the past 10 years or so. Like this, from day one, this has been requested, and it's not going to happen because these tools exist. These tools exist because it's not in Reaper. Why build it if it's already built? Support the small developers. Vordio, AA Translator, and there's even another script that's free that recently came out. I'll just look that up. Reaper AAF. This is a tool for importing AAF files into Reaper. Just search for that, give it a try. I don't think we're going to officially see that built by the Reaper devs, because there's already 3 options there. Stroudy wants input and output knobs on every plugin window for the purpose of using controllers on every plugin. I don't think I would actually use it, but sure, it's simple. It doesn't really look worse. Why not? Sends colors for pre and post fader and sidechain use. Yeah, that's a good idea. Being able to have some feedback at a glance of what the send is doing. There's already some colors for like bypassed and disabled, but it would be good to see just a couple more color options, because they have drastically different kind of functions. Pre-fader, sidechain. Yeah, that'd be great. Drag and drop effects chain to selected tracks. I'm sure we have that. Let me check that. I thought we had that already. So I'm going to take these 3 and hold down Shift. And no, it did copy only the 1. It's not the same as with sends. Got 3 tracks selected. Hold Shift. There it is. You can create sends to the same destination pretty easily, right? Also works the other direction. So holding down Shift and dragging, that will make 1 send on each of these. I think this person just wants the drag and drop effects chain function to work the same. You can also hold down the Alt key. So Shift Alt. That will make this track not go to the master. It'll only go to those destinations. Is multi-touch a thing for Reaper? Really keen to try the whole touchscreen overlay frame thing. It's not really. Maybe that stuff will come. I don't know. It's a pretty small niche already, Reaper users, and then like just for multi-touch. People with multi-touch screens is like super tiny. It'd be for like 10 people. But then people aren't buying those screens because they can't use them in any of their apps. So yeah, going back to the effects chains thing. So if we do have an effects chain on here, so let's, sure, well, it's one plugin with some parameter modulation. We can copy this. I can use SWS copy effects chain from select to track. And I select these tracks, right click, paste effects chain, and that will put that in there with the parameter modulation as well. So it's not impossible to do. Drag and drop would be more intuitive, especially if you're used to how the sends work. It's a good feature request. And can you do it from the resources window? Yes, but you would need to install each of those into the resources window too. I would like parameter modulation to catch up with Bitwig. I don't know if anyone noticed, but Bitwig seems to take a lot of inspiration from Reaper. The main issue for me is that if you make a parameter modulation, there is no visual representation on the TCP unless you add an envelope. This makes me avoid using it a lot because you can get into a mess with hidden modulators all over the place. Additionally, modulations can't modulate modulations. This would be even more powerful and allow you to set up things like macros. I agree. I will avoid using parameter modulation because you can't tell. It's so easy to forget that it's there. Need to have some sort of indicator that it is active, and then being able to modulate something that moves quickly by something that moves slowly. So it's modulating quickly over time, and then keeping all of that real time is not something that's possible right now. You can do that with automation items, and maybe that's why they're not implementing that. You can stack automation items to modulate your modulators, but if you don't want to see the envelopes, then it is a missing feature. Current one is very strange, and I don't find it useful for drum transient manipulation, like an ADSR curve. Oh, this is for Resamplematic. Yeah, the envelope in Resamplematic is very weird. IDDQD sound saw the Reaper 7 changelet or wish list first time we did this on stream, and then he went over here and added all his wish list to it. Preferences for zoom, scroll, navigation hotkeys in MIDI editor to follow the main section. If I change how I scroll in the main, preference for the MIDI editor to just follow that would be a big help for new users. Yes, so many users, even users that have been using Reaper for a long time, don't even know that there are multiple action lists. Usually you open it up in main, but there's also an alternate one if you're recording, one for the MIDI editor, one for the event list, one for the inline editor, and one for the Media Explorer. It's one window, but there's multiple selections, and each one is independent. So I see a lot of people miss that. A bit of tidying up in the windows and preferences. There's a lot of options and preferences that are not where you would expect them. Just an example, why is default envelope shapes in editing behavior and not in automation? Yeah, super good point. They do a lot of changes in the preferences, but no real full like fixing where things should go. Can you recommend a JS effects that helpful in any mix? Transient shaper can be helpful in most mixes, most tracks. adding a bit more attack or reducing the sustain of an instrument, I find that to be pretty helpful. I use it all over drums. The soft clip plugin as well, pretty useful. To navigate to project settings from preferences, small ask, but a lot of beginners think to look in preferences, but not in project settings. Just be a little tab that takes you to project settings from preferences. A lot of people don't realize kind of the relationship between the preferences page, the options menu, the project settings. It can be hard to tell which things affect only this project. There's things in preferences, this affects all projects. Then there's things in options menu that are for this project, and some that are just toggles for the things in the preferences. And then we've got project settings, and this affects this project. And if you use the save as default project settings, this affects upcoming projects. It's important. A lot of people never find that, even though there's a button for it on the main toolbar. Okay, ability to preview effects chains in the Media Explorer. Same way that you can play files through a track in the project, it could be that if you want to preview an effects chain, just send an impulse through the effects chain you hover over. Interesting. That would be pretty neat. Like some reverbs have a browser function, and you can hear a ping through that reverb impulse response. They could do something like that with effects chains, probably. I don't think that's been done before. That seems pretty neat. Although, I mean, it would still have to load all those effects. I don't know if that can really... Loading all the effects would be tricky. Although, maybe when saving the effects chain, you just have a little, like, 1 second sample, or less even, that's sort of like embedded in the metadata. That'd be one way to do it. More than 10 screen sets or project-based screen sets. That could be useful. I use 5 screen sets, and they're global. If you don't know what those are, that's under View menu, Screen Sets and Layouts. Technically, what I use is window sets, which are available in any project. Then there's also track views. It does track cursor position, track scroll position, horizontal zoom, track control panel status, including visibility and height, and track mixer status. Okay, so now I'm showing tracks 1 and 4. I could save that. And this is just for this project. And I can load that. So that would include track height and visibility and all that stuff. But these window sets, like if I do this, or this, or this, or this, or whatever, that's only saved globally, which is why you might need more than 10. Unfortunately, that can't be expanded past 10. There's also selection sets, and then layouts is kind of the theme settings related to tracks. Ability to save floating effects positions in screen sets or track views. A sandbox window where you can dock and arrange toolbars, non-arranged windows, etc. Currently, you can only dock stuff to the arrange view. A separate window that can exist on a second screen where you can freely move and resize other windows, like the video, MIDI editor, and toolbars. So there is a floating dock that's sort of like that, but everything would snap to it. So just kind of having like a, sandbox thing where you can just freely float things and move them all together at once would be pretty cool. Can't be that hard. Fold down toolbar icons. Be really elegant if you could click on a toolbar icon and have 8 more toolbar icons float below it and then close when I click one. I think he mentioned this in the chat, and this is similar to contextual toolbars. But basically like having a menu, a button in a toolbar that opens up sort of a menu, but it's filled with icons rather than a menu right below that one. That'd be pretty cool. That'd be similar to in here, like if you click on one, can you see this? Yeah. Where you've got the different tools related. I don't know if there's an actual name for this sort of menu, but that would be useful. Better track wiring window. I feel like Reaper 6.0 added this and never got any love after that. There are no mouse modifiers or marquee select, so it's got zero potential right now. What if you could marquee select tracks and move them around? What if there was a way to make all the wiring follow straight lines, or if you could hold shift to create sends from multiple tracks to a destination? Could be a great way to have a mental map of templates, but right now it looks and works awful and I never use it. Yeah, it is a real shame. The track wiring window is pretty ugly. A way to flip the direction would be cool too, because right now it works like the signal flow is like a pedal board or something. And I know it follows the Reaper mixer, but if the mixer has the master on the right, then we go to the track wiring view. You know, it might make more sense to have it view like that. Yeah, marquee selecting the tracks. There's not really even any indication that the tracks are selected in here. It's a little odd. It definitely needs a lot more work. I think people were kind of expecting it to be more like a modular patch bay kind of thing. Ability to glue video. Yeah, that would be great. A lot of people glue accidentally, thinking they're only doing it to the audio portion of the video, and then they lose the video entirely. You can always undo it, but you should be able to like cut a chunk of video out and then glue it into a new video file. It should just automatically detect that and then hopefully losslessly fix that. Live streaming capabilities. Reaper streams audio and video to an RTMP key. The timeline begins to run and you can have audio and video tracks, and you can place items in the future to play or images to show or extra videos to come in. It's a huge ask, but it would be my dream software. Yeah, that sounds cool. Even having a reliable way to like play video clips as if it's a sampler would be pretty cool. You can kind of do that with the Helga Boss's other software. What's that called? Playtime. You can launch video clips that way. The Resamplematic 5000 could play video clips and output to the video window. That would be pretty cool. Playing at different speeds with the pitch following, and the video actually slowing down. And if you're playing multiple notes, like have it overlay with like reduced opacity, something like that. That'd be pretty cool. And if it clips, maybe the saturation increases. I don't know. A JSFX UI builder, simple tool, kind of like what Max MSP has, to drag objects to a square interface and plug them into various sliders in the background. Yeah, the closest thing I've seen to that is the not smart knobs. What was that thing called? No, it's LBX Stripper. That's what it is. And this is something like that, where you can kind of create a UI. So you can make a UI for your entire channel strip. So like every plugin that is on a track. Insert strip from, this is one I made years and years ago. And at the time I never made a video about it because it never worked on my Mac. But as you can see here, I put in our Resamplematic 5000 and then Echo Blade Jr. I guess it's the wrong format, probably VST instead of VST3. But then I have got all the important knobs available here. But yeah, it's basically an editor, and you create effects chains. In a way, it's kind of like ReaLearn, but more for plugins. Rotating videos and 3D manipulation. Yeah, I know that this is possible, but so far the results have been really ugly. And there's lots of like free video editing apps that actually do it pretty well. So it's a bit annoying. Being able to rotate an image across the like Z-axis would be really nice. Hellman says, I like the idea of a modular channel environment, but it would almost certainly conflict with the current fixed signal flow layout. I can see it getting really messy, but it also opens up so many creative possibilities. On the topic of gluing video, you should also be able to mux video without re-encoding. And what this means is if you import a video and you want to just change the audio of it, normalize it, add EQ, whatever, you're not making any changes to the video itself. When you export it out of Reaper, you have to render that video again, and video rendering is usually lossy, and you lose some stuff, or you increase the size dramatically. Being able to mux a file means you can take the original video clip and replace just the audio and not touch the video at all. You just render a new piece of audio and reattach it to the original video. You should be able to detect that and do that perfectly. So far, it doesn't. There's lots of tools for it though. So you can do that outside of Reaper. An effects container, then maybe we can start creating decent substitutes for RS5K without taking up multiple effects slots on the track console. We can have skinnable instruments and effects using VSTs, JS effects, and EEL, Lua scripting, etc. Just be like Reaper's own modular workflow for a custom instrument effect. Think of Reason's Combinator, FL's Patcher, Bitwig's The Grid, etc. My first thought of that was Reactor. It seems very complex, but potentially very cool. So an effects container, like a single slot in the effects chain that contains multiple instruments with its own custom UI. You can open it up and see the individual plugins, but you're mainly working with a skinnable macro controller. Yeah, Jason's right there. You can still do some wild routing shenanigans with judicious use of the plugin pin connectors. That and sends and receives from within the effects chain using the JS effects for that. It'd be nice if there's a way to easily tell if automation is active on a given track without displaying the envelopes itself. A color or shape change to the automation mode button. That's a good idea. I can't think of a workaround for that at the moment. You could probably write something to like modify the track name. That's probably the simplest way. You know, maybe after a writing pass of automation, you hit a key and then it modifies the track name and hides the automation lanes, something like that. Actually, Jason, what I was thinking of for the JS effects is the gmem send and receive. So actually you put send at the end and receive, and you could do, let's do a, yeah, I can do that. Yeah, just instantly feeds back. But, you know, let's put in a re-EQ there as well. Will auto mute still? It still is. Sends within the effects chain, so it's sending back to itself. It gets loud. The default new user experience is not great. Menus exist because of just how bad the default menu set is, and that's a solvable problem. Asking users to find out that it exists and install it shouldn't be necessary. So easy, sure, and if you know you need it. I didn't know that people still use the menus. You guys probably have never heard of that. It's like an add-on for Reaper that basically replaces all the menus, but I'm pretty sure that was a fix for like Reaper 3 menus. So there's a lot of things that changed, and I think at one point I was using that and Reaper kept updating, and I would realize that I was missing new features because my menus were changed. So I wouldn't personally recommend that. And Reaper 6 did get a lot of menus changed. Things got renamed, things got moved, Kenny put a lot of time into that. It could go much further. Most recent updates from January? I didn't realize that. That's the downside of it though. So like, if you're using that and that extension, whatever you want to call it, gets abandoned, and Reaper updates, adds new things to the default menus, you lose those things. The default behavior of hiding the routing button, if the mixer is viewable, is unintuitive as hell. Yeah, that was something that seemed to have backfired with the Reaper 6, the Reaper 5 to 6 update. A lot of old users didn't know where things were hiding. And because there wasn't a lot of documentation at first, when it first came out, a lot of new users were very confused by that as well. So I feel like people know it by now, but definitely something that people had a lot of trouble with. Drag and drop actions from the action dialog to a toolbar and amongst toolbars. Somebody in the comments was saying that. Ability to maximize floating VST windows on a second monitor. I would like to see the pan knob rotating from automation. The faders move from volume automation. Pan knobs don't yet. No, that's not true. Automation shows that. You know, what it probably is they don't have the envelope lane showing. So hidden envelopes, display, read, automation, feedback. Make sure that that's there. So if I draw in some pan automation and play this back, you can see that this knob here is moving, right? It's all the way at the bottom. It is a little confusing maybe because this is up and it's down, but yeah. But it is clearly moving. And if we hide that automation lane, it's still going to be playing back. It's still moving. So I think that's some user error there. Some of these questions or feature requests often seem like people that don't spend enough time with it. But then there's so many preferences that could just get in the way of what feels intuitive. Not every VST is going to resize properly. VST 3s should, but a lot of older VSTs won't. And then you also get into the issue of plugins on top of other windows or things always going to the background. So if you have your mixer floating on your second window or second monitor, and you have a VST on top of that, if you click on the mixer, that VST is going to go to the background and you can't get back to it without double clicking on it. It's kind of annoying. So we've been going for just about 3 hours. You didn't miss much. It's been a slower event because the main thing that I wanted to check out didn't work. So Reaper 7 Wishlist is the fallback plan for these streams if other things don't pan out. Like otherwise we're just gonna like look at TikToks again, and that is such a bad idea. That was terrible last time we did that. What if you guys curate a list of TikToks for me and then we watch them together? We watched TikToks, was it in December? No, it was the first stream of the year. We watched maybe 20 minutes of TikTok and it hurt my brain. I've got permanent damage from that. If you guys can find some like on topic TikToks to watch, music related, maybe guitar, people with some misinformation about the audio industry, if you can get me a list maybe on the Discord. I don't really want my inbox blowing up with that, but or if you're on TikTok, I guess you could DM me. That'd be fine. But I don't think we're gonna do TikTok and just casually browse it because that's it for this stream. Stay tuned for more Reaper stuff in the future. I will be here every Friday at 9:30 a.m. Pacific time until 12:30 p.m. Pacific. And yeah, we'll be doing some Reaper related music production stuff. Thanks for all of you coming today and leaving lots of comments and keeping this thing interesting for me as well. All right. See you guys later.